Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Abby. Today I am back in the kitchen pressure canning and I thought I would bring you guys along with me. So this past weekend I was flipping through my canning books like I do, and I was looking at the all new Ball book of canning and preserving, specifically at the simple one jar vegetable recipes, which is a section where Ball has basically just a bunch of different seasoned vegetable recipes. And I found 5 different recipes that I wanted to try. Now, I have mentioned in previous videos, we got a little bit of a late start to the garden this year. So with that, I don't have any beans coming in just yet, but as soon as I do, we are going to be bombarded with them. And then as for carrots, I actually didn't do a spring planting of carrots like I typically would. So I am only doing a fall planting of carrots. Now, with that, I just went to a local farm and picked up some carrots and beans so we could test out these recipes and have a chance to try them out, see if we do enjoy them before I have all those beans and carrots to preserve, just in case we want to do more of these recipes versus the plain canned items. So the recipes we're going to be doing today include balsamic beans, lemon garlic beans, some herbed carrots, curried carrots, and then honey ginger carrots. So really looking forward to trying these out, and these recipes should come together really quickly. So I've got all my veggies washed now. I'm gonna go ahead and get the carrots peeled and chopped. I'm going to trim those green beans and we will see how many pints we end up with based on the veggies that I have. My pressure canner will hold up to 20 pints. Our veggies are all chopped and ready to go, and before I go ahead and get those jars filled and add in the seasonings, I am just heating up our broth now. I'm using chicken broth today. You could use water or vegetable broth, whatever you prefer, but I do think that the broth is going to add a lot of flavor. So I'm just scooping off any fat that's solidified at the top of my broth here, just so that we don't run into any issues with our jars sealing, and then I'm just going to get this broth heated. But I wanted to show you, look at the consistency of this broth. This is bone broth, just cooked in an Instant Pot. So I'm going to be starting out with the beans, and for the beans, you're going to need about ½ a pound of beans per pint jar. And for the balsamic beans, it calls for a ¼ cup of sliced red onion per pint. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going. And the balsamic beans don't call for any garlic, but I am going to add a clove just based on my personal preference. Some of my garlic cloves are a little bit on the large side, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut them in half, and then I will do half of one large clove in each of the balsamic bean jars. And I wanted to put the red onion in just so I know how much space to leave for the green beans, and then I will top these off to 1 inch of headspace with our green beans. I'm not going to use the yellow beans for the balsamic beans. I think that the green beans are just going to look a little bit nicer. I know not everyone is a huge fan of home canned green beans or carrots, but I think canning these with some additional flavors might make for a better end product. I do have a little bit more green beans left, so I just put another 1/4 cup or so of red onions into another jar, another half of a large clove, and we will get that filled up with the rest of these beans. So to continue on for the green beans, I'm going to go ahead and add in a half of a teaspoon of salt to each of these jars. And then we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper and a tablespoon of, it says balsamic syrup. I think they mean balsamic reduction by that. So I'm just putting the balsamic reduction right over top, and then when we top this off with the hot broth, that balsamic reduction will kind of mix into the broth. So for the lemon garlic beans, we are going to need a clove of garlic per jar, and we're also going to need some lemon zest, about a 1/4 teaspoon per jar. So I have a clean lemon here, I've got my microplane, I'm going to get this grated up, and then we'll get those added to the jar. Okay, so I actually misjudged, and we're only going to get 3 pints for the lemon garlic beans. I ran out of beans, so I just gave that other pint jar a good rinse. And to these jars, I'm going to be adding a tablespoon of lemon juice, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper and a 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. So the recipe doesn't specify bottled lemon juice, and since we're pressure canning this, the acidity should not be an issue. So I'm using fresh, and I'm just going to be adding a tablespoon to each of these jars. Now for the herbed carrots, the curried carrots, and the honey ginger carrots, the recipe does not call for garlic, but again, I am adding garlic into all of these jars just based on my personal preference. So for the curried carrots recipe, you're going to need a tablespoon of chopped cilantro per jar. I'm just going to be doing 2 jars, I think, to start out. We'll see how many carrots we have left over. So I'll add about a tablespoon of cilantro into 2 of those jars. Now I'm just adding some of those chopped carrots to these jars. It will equal out to about 1/2 pound of carrots per pint. And again, we are going to 1 inch of headspace here. We're going to top the curried carrots with a 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt and then 1/8 teaspoon of curry powder. Now for the honey ginger carrots, I'm just going to do 2 pints of those as well. And then we'll go ahead and add the seasonings. So for the honey ginger carrots, again, we're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt per jar, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, and then we will need 2 tablespoons of orange juice per jar, a tablespoon of soy sauce. I'm going to be using tamari, which is essentially a gluten-free soy sauce, and then a tablespoon of honey. I've got a big 25-pound bucket of honey here. This is the last of our honey from last year's bees. So I need to go ahead and get that divided up into some jars. And again, all of this honey is just going to melt down into the broth once we pour that hot broth over. I have 3 more pint jars here, and I'm not going to have quite enough carrots. I do have some more in the fridge, so I'm going to go ahead and get those washed up and chopped just so we can finish off those last couple jars. I think what I'm going to do is in this last jar, I'm going to use up the very last of our yellow beans. So we will do a jar of yellow beans and carrots mixed together. All of these recipes, with the exception of the lemon garlic beans, require a 25-minute processing time for pints. The lemon garlic beans only require 20 minutes for pints. I am going to be running all of this in 1 canner load, so they are going to be processed for 25 minutes anyway. So for the herbed carrots, again, I am doing 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt per jar. And then we are going to be doing a 1/4 teaspoon each of thyme and rosemary. It also gives the option to do another 1/4 teaspoon of lemon zest, but I don't have any more lemons. So we're just going to stick with the rosemary and the thyme. Our broth has been heating up behind me and it is nice and hot now. I don't think I mentioned it, but we started out with clean, warm jars. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these jars filled up to 1 inch of headspace with that broth. We will debubble, clean off the rims really well, and then get some lids on and get these into the canner. Now, I think I'm going to be able to tell all of these apart, but if you're concerned about that, what you can do is take a Sharpie and just go ahead and write on the top of the lid first. It's not going to wash off during the canning process. So I'm not going to do a full run through with how to use the pressure canner. I do have a video here on my channel dedicated to that if you're new to pressure canning. But for my Presto, I've gone ahead and added 3 quarts of water as well as a splash of white vinegar, which is going to help with any mineral buildup on the outside of the jars. I am going to be double stacking my jars today, which is safe to do in my pressure canner. You do just need a rack in between the 2 layers of jars. So we're gonna go ahead and get this filled. As I mentioned, I'm going to be processing these pints for 25 minutes. If you wanted to do quarts, you would process for 30 minutes, and the only exception to these would be the lemon garlic beans. So if you wanted to do just those, you could process the pints for 20 minutes and the quarts for 25 minutes. But again, I just wanted to be able to fit this all into one canner load. So as always, the full recipe information will be in the description box down below, and I'll be sure to bring you guys back when I'm pulling these jars out of the canner.